All right, so I would like to welcome everybody to the third episode of Intel Noir. I am Dr. Melonie Boone, and we are joined with my co-host, Dr. Yaira. And then today we're going to be talking with Dr. Dwight Hearns about the state of food deserts in its impact in urban areas. So our guest today, Dr. Hearns, is a distinguished researcher who has spent quite a few years now delving into understanding the profound impact on those people who are living in food deserts. So, Dr. Hearns, welcome to the show. And then if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and like what made you interested in researching this topic around food deserts?
Mm. Thank you, Dr. Boone. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my research information on this topic, of which I am fairly passionate about. And that passion started when I believe I was taking a quantitative class, and we needed a subject. The professor tossed out some subjects. I had no idea. People raised their hands and says, I want to do this, I want to do that. They already had something in mind. I did not for the first few I guess half hour of that class where we were searching for a topic, and the professor tossed out a topic. She's food deserts, motorcycle gangs, and some other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I said, okay, food deserts, all right. So I pulled out my phone. We went to lunch. I pulled out my phone. I researched a few things about it, and I also knew that I had worked in a grocery store in high school. So I had some familiarization with it. So I said, hey, I'll do this one, okay? And I came home after class that night and started reading further and became extremely angry because of the definition, for one, right? And for two, my family lived just a block away from a grocery store, from a Jewel.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's where I worked in high school. And then when I finished high school, I continued to work on a couple of years more until I decided this is what I want to take in college. So that's how I got hit. That's how I got stuck on the subject. My background is in IT. My undergrad is in IT, computer science, and I have an MBA in business with a concentration in finance. And as you introduced me, I have a doctorate in business psychology where I've researched the food desert topic. Okay, so when I approach some of the issues, um, I'm approaching it from an economics perspective as well. Okay. So this is behavioral economics in regards to how people are spending their money and what they spend their money on. That's a big part of food deserts. So as we explore this topic, you'll hear me uncovering or talking to that perspective.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you saw the definition for food deserts and you basically reacted. Could you define food desert for the people who are not aware or know what it is?
Yeah, food deserts is an area by which folks within a specific area, community, neighborhood, don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables within 8 blocks of where they live. Okay, so if they have to travel more than 8 blocks, it's painstaking. All right, more especially in the Chicago winter. Snow, ice, all of the above, right? Having to ride a bus or transfer or get an Uber, all that is more expensive. It's more time consuming. Whereas in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't like that. That's the part that made me angry when I unveiled the topic that first day after class and started taking a deeper dive. These communities had a plethora of stores, whether they were name brand stores or not. They were bigger mom and pop stores. There was the Jewel, of course, as I mentioned, in the community, and there were several more. for example, where I did my research, it was a Jewish community, and they had grocery stores on almost within every 5 blocks. You had somewhere to go in and buy an apple, buy an orange, buy some greens or something other than canned goods. Okay. So that's the part that angers me about this topic. And the other thing too, you have to keep in mind that people move around and they go from place to place. People come into a community and they don't know, some do, some don't, what community this used to be, what it used to have. They don't know. They come into a community, this is where they are, this is what they have available to them, and they will find ways by which to alleviate themselves from having to go without fresh fruits and vegetables.
Can you break down your research a little bit more for us? Who participated in your research? What was the results of your research? Just talk about your research a little bit more.
Well, I focused on a specific community, all right, in regards to people that, well, knowing that the community was a food desert at one time for about 5-6 years, and now it's not a food desert because they've gotten a store in the community. So whether or not, how did it affect people during that time? That was what I was interested in as far as my dissertation topic, all right? And so the people that were in my research were both men and women from, say, 18 to 70. 70-year-olds get out, they do grocery shopping. That's what, they look forward to it every week, okay? They some of them get on a bus and they go way out somewhere, okay, and they're buying fresh produce and fruit, okay? Male and female, okay? Working, professional, married, single. Those were my research participants. And I asked them questions in regards to the frequency that they shop. More so, one of the most distinguishing responses that I got to a question that I thought was that was good was because there is a store in the community, what is the frequency that you shop there? And the response was about 90% of the time that they only get certain things from that store. Okay. They don't like the meat. They don't like the fish. Wherever they've been going, that's where they're going to go. They like the price, and so they'll run to the neighborhood store just to get, some small items. And that was 90% of the time. Okay, because they had cars. So another thing about the research that I unveiled, that definition does not hold up today. Okay, that definition came from Scotland, okay, in the 1900s by a group of people that actually kind of lived in projects. Okay, and they identified themselves as folks living, we don't have fresh access to food, so we live in a food desert, and so they identified themselves, okay? But that definition doesn't hold up because where I did my research, there's mixed modes in terms of demographics of people that live here. When you think of a poor community, I don't think of people that don't have transportation, they don't have cars and stuff. We have cars here. We spend more money here going out, traveling to buy food than anybody else in the city. Well, other people in our condition or in our likely demographic scenario, all right? But the others can walk 5 blocks this way, 5 blocks that way, 5 blocks the other way with their little stroller and get groceries and come home.
I think it's interesting too, because some people will say, well, they have neighborhood stores, they have corner stores and things like that. But one of the distinctions that you're bringing up is like, while there may be some of those local kinds of stores, the fruits, the vegetables, like the quality meats and things is what's missing, which also adds to that definition of a food desert. So you may have 3 or 4 corner stores that you can walk to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to get the types of food and the quality of food that leads to a better quality of life.
And you're going to pay more money for it.
Yeah.
Okay, because the corner stores cannot supply that kind of value. They don't buy in bulk to get a lower price. So what they have there, they pay this price for, and they're going to pass that price on to the consumer, which is going to be higher than if you went to the big supermarket.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you think about the issue, and this is, so we're all sitting in Chicago, just so that everyone knows, and we know that it's prevalent here in Chicago. But when you think about across the country, in some cases across the world, like what are government agencies doing? And I know there's been a float notion here in Chicago about city-run grocery stores, and there's a lot of unanswered around what that would look like. But what were you seeing that other agencies and governments are doing to try to combat the food desert issue?
Oh, well, the government has this, the federal government has a SNAP program, right? They used to had another name called food stamps or something like that, right? And it's still active and alert. It's still active and serving people. I think the most recent thing I read about it was that the Republicans wanted the criteria that people be working
Yeah.
a certain amount of hours or something like that in order to retain that benefit. Okay, but it's still out there. If you will remember Michelle Obama, she had her initiative. It was her initiative when she and Barack were in the White House that she wanted to reduce food deserts. And through her initiative, she worked with Walmart responded. Okay. And Walmart put a store in the Bronzeville area. Yeah, Bronzeville area. It was a Walmart there. It has most recently closed. Okay. All right. But I also understood that that's what Walmart does. They will open new stores and close others for not really giving the reason why, but businessmen, people that are business minded can understand what's going on, why these stores close. There's another initiative. I don't know. Do you want to get into the topic now in regards?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there is a store. Oh, yeah. There's a government-run store in Erie, Kansas.
Okay.
All right. It ain't doing too good. They lose. They've said that they opened the store in 2021 and they lost 132,000 since then. Okay. They're losing money each month. Their competition is Walmart. And Walmart, that particular Walmart, is 15 miles away.
Wow.
Okay. How can but that's the closest store to where they're competing with this government-owned store in Erie, Kansas. So that there's a Dollar General across the street, and they still haven't profited. They still haven't made money. 1 month in 2022 was the only month that they were ever profitable. And it doesn't give how much they made that particular month. So the goal this year is for them to lose only $100,000. Now, how can you run a store and say, I just want to lose just about $100,000? I'm sorry, that just doesn't work for me. but I kind of understand what's going on with how they are addressing putting a store in a, let's use it this term, distressed community. Okay.
Do you think there's a stigma? So I think back to when I was young. I might date myself a little bit on this, but there was the notion of like you get the government cheese, like the stuff that came in the white and black, the generics, and you had your paper food stamps where you'd go to these places and you'd get like your milk, your eggs, and stuff like that. Do you think that there's kind of a stigma that people may have around these government-run stores where there's concern? Like, I'd rather figure out how to get 15 miles away to Walmart than to go to a government-run store?
It could be. There's a psychological concept involved with it. Just like I mentioned in my research that I unveiled, that just because there is a store in the community, and they will go. Everybody goes, what do you got? Let me see. And then you compare what you've been getting to what they're offering in the new store, and you'll decide whether or not you want to make a change.
Yeah.
You may experiment and say, well, I'll try it, and some won't. People like where they've been going, they want their prime cuts, they're used to it. Okay. Price is a big factor. Some people go to 2 or 3 different stores and still only just come to the neighborhood store for small items or for specific items, per my research.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting, like sorry, go ahead.
There are other factors. I hope we can, there are other factors that come into play when we talk about neighborhood stores. Let's see if they come up in questions from you guys. But please go on.
No, to what you're saying, I was saying it's just interesting, like what people consider when they go to certain grocery stores. Because for me, a lot of it is about like the convenience. So I'm always like, which is the closest grocery store? And then maybe I might just go, the most I'll do is like 2 different grocery stores. Or I'm someone who orders groceries online just for like the convenience. And I know for me, it is a privilege for me to be saying I have the capacity to just order groceries because it's just convenient and it's not as much money. But I know somebody might not have the luxury of that when they live so far from a grocery store, and like there are people who are like picky on like, oh, I want this specific type. So it's just interesting, like what different people think about when they're going to like a grocery store in a specific type. Because I live close to a Joel Oscar and I live close to an Aldi's, and everyone knows Aldi's is like a cheaper option. Like Joel Oscar existed before Aldi's came the neighborhood, but they're literally like a block or 2 like next to each other. So it's just interesting to think about dynamic between the 2. Yeah.
There was one woman in my research that acts like you, that orders their groceries and has them delivered, and the way she explained it to me, because I did a qualitative research. Okay, she explained it as saying that she's busy, she's professional, she doesn't have time, and it's easier, and she was ordering from Whole Foods. Okay. All right. That's what we wanted in the community. We didn't get a Whole Foods. We didn't get a Mariano's. We didn't get any of those. We didn't get a Jewel. We got a store called Local Markets. Okay. And that's not what the community wanted, actually. Okay. But their offerings were good. Okay. But there are other factors in regards to why people go into certain communities and not others. All right. There's I put it this way, security/crime. All right. Many people have this app on their phone called Citizen. All right. And Citizen alerts them as to what's going on. Okay. And if every time or 2-3 days a week you get an alert on your phone as there's been a shooting within a certain proximity of where your grocery store is, are you likely to go to that grocery store? Okay. No one wants to get shot or in crossfire trying to get a loaf of bread and some milk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's just not cool. It doesn't make sense. So when we talk about, as you mentioned earlier, Melonie, government-run stores, I don't care what you put there. If you don't deal with the crime, no one's coming to your store.
Yeah. Yeah. And talk to us too about some of these other factors, or what were some of the things that, were surprised you or really stuck out as you were researching the topic?
Yeah, that one in particular struck me in regards to crime. Um, um, there have been some issues in regards to, the quality of the food, the frequency that they do their shopping. But the crime is one of the most important. It happened over a period of time. You kind of don't really realize it. But some of the reasons why other stores close, like the Walmarts, the Targets, because there have been shrinkage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We understand what shrinkage is. It affects the bottom profit, the bottom line, which is profit. Okay. In some instances, also too, within that term shrinkage, you put a store in the community. One of the stipulations is that you hire people from the community.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, everybody is trainable, right? But if you don't train them to bring the stock from the back room out to the shelves, if it doesn't reach the shelves, then it's shrinkage. In other words, it can break, it can, and things of that sort, or it can be dented. It may fall off of the pallet and it's dented. You pull a dented can off of the shelf, you're not going to buy that.
You put it back.
You put it back, and so and so the next day, you have to pull those cans off of the shelf, and that affects your bottom line because you wind up selling them to employees to be able to take home, because you realize there's nothing wrong with the contents of the can. It's just that the can is dented. No one wants to buy that. No one buys a dented car,
Mm-hmm.
So you have the crime. You have training of people. You have customer service. There are some people don't go to stores because of the customer service. The cashiers, are yakking between themselves and, making noise, and, you ask for where something is, you just don't really get what you think you should get. You receive what you like when you go outside of the community to other stores. Now, these are factors that came across within my research and I've experienced some of them myself. Okay. So it's interesting. And this is a topic that has to truly be worked on. And I'm looking forward to what the city comes up with, or maybe I would love to talk with the city or someone on that team in regards to their researching a government-run food store. I understand that there are several areas by which they want to possibly run a test. And one, of course, is Inglewood. Obviously, one is Inglewood, West Garfield, Auburn, Gresham, and Washington Park.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So maybe I would really like to work with a team in researching this possibility.
I think that it makes total sense. And it sounds to me too, like just putting a grocery store in the neighborhood does not solve the issue.
No,
Right.
it
We're
doesn't.
seeing that in Kansas and other places.
That's a good point. In my chapter 4, I vehemently write that don't be satisfied with one store.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go for 3.
Yeah.
Go for 4. Okay, one store should not have a monopoly on its offerings nor its price.
Right.
Okay. If you put 2 high quality stores in a community, they're gonna compete against for price. They're gonna compete against having the best workers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're gonna compete for cleanliness and security and every other thing in order to get your business. So you put one store up there, they feel like, well, you're gonna come or you don't. This
Yeah.
is what you got.
Yeah.
All right, and we don't deserve that. People don't deserve that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And competition is not bad, right? In what you're describing, right? Competing for the business in a way where you're stocking quality foods and customer service is high, and you're not able to just like I went grocery shopping this morning and went into a store that I was going to try for the first time, and there wasn't a grocery store nearby, and the prices were insane. And so, like most people, my behavior was to go to the jewel that I know, right? The one. And I was in that grocery store looking at my Jewel app saying, wait a minute, this is $8.99 here. It's $4.99 at Jewel. So now I'm gonna go to where I belong. But there's a situation where they are the primary grocery store. I didn't see one around anywhere, and they're able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what people do. And whatever store you put in the community, whether it's a government store or not, they're going to have some items that are going to be higher than others. And that'll be based on their supply chain dynamics. Where are they getting their food from? Where are they getting their canned goods, their produce, and everything else? Okay, wherever they get it from, they may have to pay a higher price than some other stores in order to bring it in-house. Okay, so you can't really expect a government-run store just to be cheap or to hand it out. There are going to be expenses associated with that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, did you see any more cultural implications? I know it's Black History Month, but I know like most of the places that you mentioned were in Chicago. But when I think about a place like New York, because I probably grew up in Brooklyn, and I feel like fruits and vegetables were very accessible. Like you can, based on where I live, like you can easily like walk down the street somewhere and then see a lot of like little grocery stores with foods. But I'm also just curious like the cultural implication, because I know that's not everywhere in Brooklyn. Like there might be some parts where it's like they might have to go further for groceries. So I'm just curious like if you experienced or saw any other cultural implication. I know you talked about Scotland, but where other place? And same thing when I think about a place like Ghana, where I grew up a little bit, where it's like groceries is very accessible. Like you can walk anywhere and somebody's selling like pineapples, or you go somewhere. So I'm just curious about that in your research.
The Latinos, okay, Latinos. You go west, their shopping center is very, very robust. It's very colorful. It's very sharp, clean. It has a level of professionalism, a happy, festive level of shopping. When you go west into the Latino communities, okay, they get their fresh fruit and vegetables from where? Mexico, okay, from home, okay? That's what their supply chain is all about. All right. And they've been keeping it going and going. You go in those stores and everything it's fresh, it's colorful, it looks very edible. Okay. And it's what a store should be. Okay. and it's very plentiful. Now, they also have a big deal with markets. That's what you were just explaining, that open air markets in Ghana. Okay. When I was in Brazil, there was lots of open markets, and you just go by and get some grapes, bananas, whatever you're looking for. Okay. At the market. Okay. We do that here on the South Side too. But it's more plentiful with seemingly other groups. Okay. So that's my experience with other cultures. That's not a part of my research, but that's simply a part of experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, as people are listening to this, and thank you too for kind of helping us understand what food deserts really are and how they're impacted. But what can everyday people do to help?
Right?
Is there anything? Like, is it calling up your local politician? Like, is it volunteering at farmers markets? Like, what can
Yeah.
people do?
Yeah, I was just being facetious with that response, but yeah, they can get involved with neighborhood groups,
Yeah.
well, groups within their community to address the issue. All right, that's how we got a grocery store within this community that I did my research. It was a 4-year painstaking strategy, if not just simply walking up and down the street with signs. We want food. We want food. No, but it does take some organizing in some instance. You have to let your politicians know that's what you voted for them to do, right? You know, Chicago is one of the few cities that doesn't have a job description for their aldermen. Aldermen don't have a specific job description. In other words, they don't have to be in that office 40 hours. Okay? So the idea is putting making your issue a priority for these people to deal with. And if they don't hear you, then you go to your representative. You know, just knocking on the mayor's office, that may or may not get attention. But this mayor is pretty attentive. He knows what's going on, and I think he's doing the best he can to address the issue. But people can do more in getting their local aldermen involved, starting groups, supporting groups that can deal with the issue as well.
Yeah. I think too, not forgetting that we can donate and support food pantries that are trying to provide some relief in these communities and do the best that they can. So any way that people can connect with a local food pantry to donate money, food, clothes. There was one in my old neighborhood where whenever we had a Goodwill bag, it went to the food pantry. We dropped it off on Wednesday morning, and all the stuff was distributed by Wednesday afternoon. And so try and find ways to connect through people who are already trying. But then I do like, you got to make a little noise, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to ask for it, and they'll be like, okay. But you realize that they've been inundated with other stuff too. So you have to ask them again. You have to ask them again. You have to ask them again. You have to stay on your subject, okay, until you get some effort. And let me say one other thing on the subject is that, okay, having a government-owned grocery store is not the only way to get a grocery store in the community.
Yeah.
Okay. There are other things, like the former, one of the former mayors, Rahm Emanuel. We use TIF funds, okay, from neighborhoods, tax dollars to attract a vendor into the community. And then you give them tax breaks as well for over the years to attract a store. An alderman or some political figure representing that area can also be instrumental in attracting those kinds of stores in the community, for Mariano's or Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or somebody like that. Okay. But it has to get noticed, like we just mentioned, and it has to get pushed. You can use TIF funds. What do you think we're paying property taxes for? Where does that money go? It should go to some of the communities that don't have grocery stores.
Yeah. And I think too, digging even deeper is understanding how do we get them to stay? Because I know a few years ago, there were tons of announcements about all of these amazing grocery stores that were opening up in disadvantaged communities. And then you hear a few years later that they're closing. So again, if you look at it, system wide, like how do we get them? How do we keep them? Right?
Okay. And you get them the same way you keep them.
Mm.
You deal with the crime.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not gonna go somewhere where there was a chalk outline a few hours ago. Okay.
Right.
You're not going to that store tomorrow or the next day or the day after that. You may not ever want to go there, okay, depending on the frequency. You're going to have to also reduce shrinkage. Shrinkage is retail theft. That's part of it as well. It's also underringing, okay? You have the same way you attract them is the same way you keep the store. You have to deal with crime. Okay, no one's going to put a store in there. You can't have people running a vehicle up into your business. Okay, well, people will say you got insurance and insurance. My buddy, we always joke. We say insurance. All right, but the idea here is that it costs more money to have a business in the city than it does in the suburbs. You may not have to pay for security in the suburbs. You may not have that kind of shrinkage in the suburbs. I can make easier money in the suburbs than I can in the city.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I'm an executive, I'm going to go to my boss and maybe do the comparison and recommend that we go to the suburbs with this idea. Okay. I've researched both areas and I think the suburban community is a better place. And stores are opening out there all the time. The grocery store community, the retail grocery store community are opening stores every month. They're just not opening in the city because of the crime. The crime. They're not going to stay in the city because of the crime.
No.
So, go ahead, Yaira. No, you go ahead. I always jump in.
No, I know you mentioned crime as a huge factor, and I also think food desert is a topic that I don't see a lot about, and it has a huge impact on like people's health and a variety of different things. So I'm just curious, like, what would you say is your take up, like you want people to take away from this conversation? So maybe three things that people are listening to it. What would you say? If you're listening to this today, what are the takeaways for people?
Well, that's part of my chapter 4, and one is one of them is what we just finished talking about is to become involved, get other folks on your block in your neighborhood that feel the same. Go to your alderman's office. Schedule a meeting, have him come to a church meeting or something like that of like-minded people that want to have change in their community. Just don't wait for the mayor or somebody to just respond to you. Okay. Secondly, I should have put this one first, but do history in where you live. Find out what it used to be. I don't think like I said, where I am, it did not used to be the way it is. But when things leave and they're not the same, and um, things become lower than what it was, you go into survival mode, and some things you see and some things you don't see. Your eyes are open, but you are not linking the fact to what it used to be. So the community is declining as opposed to enhancing. Okay. So open your eyes, get involved with your community leaders. Okay. Come up with some kind of innovative solutions and interventions. The markets, the open markets in the summer are always going to be helpful. Okay. I had a produce bus come in front of the church once a week. I think I had it on Wednesdays. Okay. And seniors could come out and buy fresh fruits and vegetables off of the truck. Come up with some innovative ways to access your fresh fruits and vegetables. It's very, very helpful for a number of reasons. One of the things in my research was in regards to health. You have to have these things. You have fresh fruits and vegetables. It's good for your health. And that was one of the things that opened my eyes when I was doing the research. I began to eat healthier since doing this research. Okay. Fresh fruits and vegetables can help alleviate anyone from ever becoming obese, diabetic, high blood pressure, or heart disease. And all of those things have underlying conditions that that affected a person that got COVID during the pandemic. And that's part of my research. That's part of my book that I talk about. So this is I'm only mentioning it here because it is a topic really worth fighting for.
Yeah.
Okay. Really worth going to bat for and sticking with it. Okay. Because it involves your health. You may not have a lot of money in the bank, but if you have your health, you are a billionaire.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you so much. I think I love the sticking with it, right? Just because you get the store doesn't mean you now are done, right? And like the idea of being creative, so it doesn't even maybe have to be a brick and mortar store. Like, what does it look like? Is it pop-up stores that are, bringing? Because I know here we have farmers markets throughout the city during the summer. How do we find space for farmers markets during the winter and things like that to just increase the access?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, you have to work to keep your community store. You have to keep it clean. You have to have good customer service. You have to have the products that people want, okay? And not be afraid to ask them, not be able to have a community night and have folks from the community to come into the store to tell you what they like, what they dislike, things of that sort, okay? Obviously, we talked at length in regards to crime, okay? All those things. You have to keep the parking lot well lit. You have to keep it free from folks carjacking folks. And so, yeah, it takes a little bit more to run a store in the city than it does in the suburbs.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us today and talking on this topic. We will have links in the bottom to your research, and then keep up the work, right? If we can find ways to connect you, we absolutely will. Because like you said, this is something that needs to be talked about, that we don't hear a lot about, but it is truly impacting people. And so thank you so much for your research and your time today.
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to expound on my dissertation topic.
Thanks so much. And maybe one day we'll see it in a book. We could try to make that happen too.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hearns. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you.